Hello and welcome to the I3 lecture series hosted by the Masters in Digital Photography program at the School of Visual Arts. We are thrilled to have artist Cecilia Paredes as tonight's guest speaker. Originally from Lima, Peru, Cecilia is currently based in Philadelphia. Her multidisciplinary practice includes photography, performance, drawing, sculpture, and installation art. She studied at the Fine Arts Catholic University of Lima, at the Cambridge School of Arts and Crafts in England, and at the Scuola del Nudo in Rome, Italy. Cecilia is best known for her ongoing photographic series in which she explores the visual juxtaposition of her painted body with the patterns and surface below it. Solo exhibitions include Tabacalera Madrid, MoMA Moscow, Museum of Contemporary Art and Design Costa Rica, World Bank Washington, D.C., IILA Institute Rome, Contemporary Art Museum Panama, and the Museum of Modern Art in Guatemala, among others. She has been part of the 51st Venice Biennale, Havana Biennial, Open Maps in Madrid and Barcelona, Getxo Photo in Bilbao, and Photográfica Bogotá as guest artist in 2013. Please help me welcome Cecilia Paredes to our lecture series.
Thank you very much. Good evening. Everybody, thanks for being here and accompanying me in this talk that we're going to have. Thank you, Jaime, and thank you for the master's program to invite me and making me part of this wonderful event and series of artists. As you may know, I am not a traditional photographer in the strict sense, but I do use photography as means to interpret, to do my work and to register the performance that I do as an artist. So, of course, I learn about photography from the real photographic masters, but I am a little bit of a bird that is stealing from the traditional photography and making that part of my work. In all forms of art that I practice, I normally talk about the confrontations of life that a human being have. But when I take it to a personal level, I talk about exile, because that's what happened to me. I left my country many, many years ago, and I kept on living in many parts of the world until I settled, or so I thought, in Costa Rica for 25 years. So Costa Rica was what I called home, and that's where I started my contemporary art career. When I was living in Costa Rica, the proximity with nature was immense. And so the first thing that I started doing when I did performance for the first time in 2001 was to interpret the animals that were part of the history of my entourage. And the animals that I chose to interpret were the marginal animals. That is the place where I feel a little bit more confident in. And also because, quite frankly, out of love for those animals. And out of curiosity, because the marginal animals are the ones that you have to sort of discover. And then you learn how to love them. So this is the first image that I did when I started performing. In all the instances that you're going to see, it's me, the subject, that is there. And in those times, well, body painting was not something that was around. So this is a mixture of mud and shoe color. So the eyes, for example, do not have any Photoshop intervention. It's just the contrasts that are making them shine. And the deer antlers are a copy of the original ones that were in the Costa Rica Natural History Museum. I developed a very close friendship with the curator of the Costa Rican Natural History Museum, and you will see throughout my work that he is essential part of what I obtain. So the antlers are resin with patina. And I am interpreting the deer. That is one of the images that I am very much interested in because of many significance. Number one, in the Peruvian Andean mythology, the deer is the animal that is part in the land of the dead and part in the land of the living people. Sometimes in certain excavations you find the sculpture of a deer half inside the tomb and half outside. And it is also the image that Marcus Aurelius coined as the emperor of the East and the West. So it is a very powerful and magical image that I was very interested in. And this is the armadillo. Of course, for whoever is from Central America here, they will recognize it. This is an animal that, for me, was a discovery because I had never seen an armadillo before going to live in Costa Rica. And it happens that if you go by car from Costa Rica towards Nicaragua, you will find that the peasants have eaten the armadillo, and they just take out the animal and use the carcass of the armadillo as a Pyrex, literally, directly to the fire and cook there. And then they put it in a stick in front of their houses to dry. And that is when I passed and I saw them. And I discovered that because they are cheloides, they can be shaped in any way if you submerge them in very hot water. So that is why, that is how I took advantage of reshaping them. These are 3, and place them on my back. The rest of the skin has photoshopped information in all of what you see in the skin. This is an enormous fish head that I found in a market, and that was so suggestive that I had to buy the whole fish and take it in the back of my as I was walking, like one of those remedies of the 50s of emulsion de Scott, if you kind of remember. And I was not brave enough as it looks, because if you see in the border of the jaw, you have a white line, and that is the plastic wrap that I had on top of my head in order to be inside his head. But I wanted to portray, the incredible impact that sometimes, at least for me, was when I was little and I was in the market in Lima, and I saw the guy chopping the head out of these animals, and it made me take a little bit of solidarity with him. And these are the octopus hands. These are 2 octopuses. The transference in the skin is also Photoshop at 30% of transparency. So you can sort of see a little bit the skin and the little hair in the skin showing in terms. I do not use too much Photoshop, but that doesn't mean that I do not use it. I really would use anything in order to make the message clear. So in this case, it was very subtle, but still, it was another thing of the enchantment of the octopus hands, no? This is a shrimp, and this is only white paint with masking tape. the place where you see the skin is where the masking tape used to be. Now, I've always been very empiric in my work. Like, this is me in my studio figuring out what can I do or how can I do what I have to interpret. So some of the images are not exquisite, you might say, but this is the way I have been producing my work all the time, a little bit. This is all inside information that I'm giving you in order to tell you how I did it. And the leaves on the ground are loto leaves. This is the spider, and this is also only body painting. And in this case, the camera was up in the ceiling, and I am lying down in the floor. And the shadow is made up because I am standing up, detaching myself from the floor with my knuckles and the tip of my feet. So that is how I elevate my body, and the shadow is formed, which is part of the essential part of the spider. No, the spider is always walking, projecting her shadow. This is the other part of the fish. This is the second part of the fish, and you can see how big it was. And so this is a little bit like the idea was a sort of going back to the water, no? Taking the fish back to the water. And this is the snake. One of the reasons why I did this work was because I was very much afraid of snakes. And living in Costa Rica and in Central America, it is very often that you find a snake. So I had to come to terms with her. And so I decided to interpret her. So the Museum of Contemporary Art lent me the basement, and on I went with this whole load of truck of sand, and I glue a reproduction of the snake skin into my body, and the rest of this is me under the sand, and the rest of myself is hidden in the sand. And if I may point you out, the top is my elbow, then it's the torso, then there is the knee, and the ankle is the last part. And the rest of me is under the sand, that it was not very easy to do. I had, like 3 times, I had to start all over again because I was suffocating and I was not coming into terms until I started to think as a snake. So, you know, lower your pulsations, lower your cardiac rhythm until you stay still. And when I was under the sand, I made a poem about this, as how I felt and what's the perspective of somebody who is under the sand, no? So I have not seen a snake after this, so I don't know if I really came to terms, but certainly my perspective changed. And it was a wonderful experience. This is the tree woman. Here, this is a very bad photo because I quite frankly do not have another one that it is better, but the dress is made out of little leaves that have been glued to the panties that I wear, the whole stretch body. And I wanted to tell you that part of the performance is also the ritual of doing the dress, the ritual of planning the thing, the whole act. Like, for example, when I was gluing these little leaves on the dress, I was kind of already getting into the character. So when the moment comes, there is an aggregated value, if you may say. So this is what the tree woman. And this is a bird taking a rest. This is this is already in Pennsylvania, and this is the Bryn Mawr forest, where I was portraying a little bird, like a brown bird, that is just taking a rest. It was 6 a.m. in the morning, and the color of the whole atmosphere of the moment was exactly like this, silvery, because it was about to snow. So it was, everybody was in bad humor because it was so cold, and the photographer was angry, and I was wearing those little feathers, and everybody was like very, let's get over with. And we were totally silent, and a deer came. And he stood right there in front of me, looked at me, and continued. And believe me, it was so magical. But also, when you are working in nature, those things can happen, you know. So maybe a person who goes and see the picture in an exhibition doesn't know this, but it certainly was marvelous. And this is the Pappagallo. This is part of the work that I presented at the Venice Biennial. And the reason why it is, for me personally, so important is because I was living in the city when somebody came and told me that in my same city, in Costa Rica, a guy had Pappagallos in his garden. And this is in that time, this is a bird that was in severe danger of extinction. So I went and knocked his door. And I said, how come that you have these birds? And he said, well, there are nest poachers that go to the highways, and with the little babies, they want to sell the babies to the tourists. And we have recovered those animals, and here they are growing. So I convinced him that during 9 months, as the months of the pregnancy, I would go every Sunday to his garden and pick up the feathers that they have shed. And this is the shawl that I made with those feathers. So it is called the celebration of life. And this is, and also this guy, it gets better, because this guy received funding from a incredible network in Sweden, and he has now a place where the birds are on transit to a beautiful ecological place that it's called Piedras Blancas, near the frontier with Nicaragua in Costa Rica, so they can be released back to nature. So it's a marvelous story. Skunk. This is the Curious Skunk, and this is just black painting with white, and this is the Thirsty Skunk. And the paws are just painting also. And I have to confess that it is wall painting, because in those times I didn't have skin painting, so it was like many hours in the shower after that. And these are the fabulous animals. I had this series of fabulous animals, and these are the gargoyles. The feathers are lent by the friend of the Natural History Museum, and the painting is just white paint with a net on top of the skin, and then black dust sifted on top, and then the net goes out, and I had this sort of dinosaurus kind of appearance in the skin. This is the second gargoyle, and this is just flour and pencil on the skin. And this is the gargoyle living for the next night to come back. This is Medusa. And this is dawn. This is the same forest of the one of the little bird and the story of the deer, only that it is summer. So you can change. I reuse a lot of my material. So here come the feathers again for the little gnome. And this is Juno, who is the goddess of the feminine gender. In the mythology, Juno kills the giant of the 1,000 eyes and puts the eyes on the tail of her favorite animal. And that's how the peacock comes to life. And then I have this series that is called Representation, where I represent, in this case, Lake Titicaca. This is the lake that represents Peru's soul, I might say. And these are the little flowers that are around the lake. And this is only sifted dust, blue dust on top. I wanted everything to be absolutely perfect, but you can see a little indent on the left that was unavoidable. But I wanted the whole lake to surround her, no? This is with my heart in my hand. And this is dawn. This is for all the students of photography. This is the typical case where photography embellishes everything and always gives you back. This is nothing in a little hacienda in Costa Rica. This was a little river it was a stream, really. And it looks like a powerful river. The composition also has a line that continues in the juxtaposition of the two fingers that makes a whole line perfectly aligned with the figure. And the way the light is on top of the back of the neck, this was pure daylight, you know. I didn't have any sort of illumination whatsoever. And it worked so great because sometimes in photography is like this, you know, sometimes the photographer gives you back, and in this case was a very fortunate one. This is Australia in Lake Coroiba, in a project that we had to be part of the lake. So I am intertwining my legs with the existent branches. And this is, these are leaves that are in nerval state, because there is a worm that comes and eats the epithelium of the leaves and leaves only the nerval state of the leaves. And it happens that they come by groups. So if you find one of these leaves, you will find a lot of them. So that's what I did. I kept on looking for these leaves for almost a year until I found enough to be able to paste them on the back of my body, so I can have this image that is called skin leaf. This piece is based on the poem of a Peruvian poet who was killed that says, "It happens that I do not fear to die among trees and birds." And these are birds that were replaced on this Natural History Museum. They were replacing the collection of birds. And my friend called me and said, "Look, I have a lot of old birds. Do you want them?" Of course, for me it was like a treasure, no? So I had this and another piece that I did with the birds. They are defying the law of gravity because I have pasted them with double tape, but that's part of the story of every performer, no? Now, after 25 years of living in Costa Rica and thinking that that was it, and finally I was at home, I moved to Philadelphia in 2004. It was a difficult but wonderful decision because I did it because I married Jay. So a whole new chapter of my life started, and I started a sort of diary with this. So I started half writing on my skin what I have left behind, half writing what I was encountering, half dreaming about certain things. Quite frankly, I'm still not sure of what I do as an artist ever. I always have a lot of doubts. But only after seeing a lot of my work on display before an exhibition, I realized that I was telling my own story. But at the beginning, I was just doing this because I just needed to continue doing something with my body and performance. And this is the first one that I did, and I was just painting the story behind on top of my skin. And the subject, that is always me, is standing still, not moving. Like my job now is to be part of the landscape. I have to integrate myself and do something about this new whole environment that I am confronting. So you will notice that the person is at the beginning, totally static. This one is a memory from Costa Rica. This fabric that I found, this is an industrial fabric, I found that it contained the flora of my beloved Costa Rica. And all of them, the orchids and all the flora that, so what I did was I straightened up a piece of fabric, and then I lied myself in the middle and wrapped myself with the rest of the fabric, as people do with the flag when somebody dies, for example, or you want to make a statement. Well, I did this statement, and this piece is called Costa Rica, My Other Self, because it is a place where I call really my second home. No? This is a piece that I started doing when I went for the first time to Asia. And I started learning about these marvelous stories and parallel world that I never knew about. For example, that little piece of skin that it is not painted, it's called a precipice. I cannot find something more erotic than that. So I thought, this is absolutely wonderful, a wonderful world that I want to start visiting, no? And which I did, and I continue to. Now, in this case, the character is already feeling a little bit more at home. So she's starting to imitate the landscape. The hands are trying to imitate the shape of the Art Nouveau shape behind. And so in this one, and in this one, and in this one. So the character starts to feel a little bit more at home. And this one particularly, I seldom do performance giving the face, because the face is so protagonic that you don't want to, be so confrontational or direct. I always like a little bit of suggestion. But in this case, the face is almost unperceivable. You just have to really find it. And the eyes work perfectly well with the little light blue seeds that are in the composition. So I thought that it was a great option to make this portrait like this. This is called Private Garden, and this is called Sea of Roses. This is called Flow, and the character is getting a little bit more and more enigmatic, sort of. I am starting to be feeling like the landscape myself, kind of feeling. This is again part of the Asia series, and it's called Both Worlds. And this is a series called the Unreachable Paradise. That is the need or aim for a person to find perfect paradise, but it doesn't exist. So in this case, she's trying to reach this beautiful garden, but the beautiful garden is just a graphic. So in this case, and in this case, it's just the series of the Unreachable Paradise. And this one is called Eve. And this one is one of the last, you might say, last semester piece, when I started going into depth about the Paradise series and reaching a little bit the horrors of what we encounter in the feminine gender. And this is called The Secret. And this is also another image where the character is already taking the landscape to her own life or story. And this one is called Vienna, and this is a hand that even I have a little bit of difficulty finding. This is, what's the name of the guy who, Narcissus, thank you. Oh my goodness. I'm sorry. Lily. Lily is meditative and in introspection. And this one is one piece that I did confronting the face openly, because it was a commission that I had from the Nobel Peace Center, that we were doing an exhibition called Art for Change. And I was talking about preservation of nature. So I literally painted nature in my face, no? So a little bit to say in your face kind of thing, no? And that is why I did this piece. This is the root of the dragon, and this is called bamboo. Here I have my assistant behind me showing her hands, because as you can see, she has 4 hands. And so this is a little bit of a trick. And this is a series of what I call the soldiers, that is a happening that a performance that I did on the spot in front of the camera. That is, I take a piece of paper, in this case, these 4 series of images that you're about to see. and I wrap them in very quickly in front of the camera, and I wrap them around myself, and I stand there as a paper soldier. Okay, so this is one. This is the other one. This is all pasted with Scotch tape behind, like very, very quickly. This is the last one. So this is a little bit of a sort of divertimento. And this one is not me, because sometimes I receive commissions, and in this case, I received the commission of this wonderful artist that is called Mia Maestro, who is a Hollywood artist that participated in Motorcycle Diaries and Frida, and with Salma Hayek. And she wanted, as she said, to honor my work. And she wanted me to paint her for a video. So as I was listening to her proposal, it was like only getting better, because she was like, okay, we're going to film in Hollywood, okay. So we're flying you, you know, so it was so much fun. And we did, we went there, we closed the door for 3 days, painted 5, 6 images, and we did a video, and we are participating on a Grammy next time. So let's see what happens. Yes, and you can see the video online, and it is called The Blue-Eyed Sailor, for whoever wants to know. Blue-Eyed Sailor with Mia Maestro. So this was a lot of fun to do. And we're getting almost at the end of the series, where the subject not only has abandoned the static posture, but now she is the landscape. And so one of the ingredients that this piece has is the inclusion of the drapery. That is, of course, a study of the great masters of the medieval times, no? And this is called Firenze. These are all parts of the world that I am interpreting. And this is called Hermitage. I have a strong relationship with Russia. I developed it like 6 or 7 years ago, and it was like totally crash, totally love. So I've been going back a lot, and going around the Hermitage was quite a wonderful lesson of how Orientalism has been forever in the arts in Europe. This is a piece that I did with a black background. So she is sustaining herself alone, totally alone. She is now the landscape totally. The central part of the back is the painting, and the rest is just the material being all turned around and wrapped in order to make all those creases and wrinkles. And this one is a piece called The River Within. This piece is a piece that I presented recently in Arco, because Arco, the art fair in Madrid, was dedicated to Peru. And it is a piece that attends directly to the tribes around the Amazon jungle, and the Shipibo tradition, where the women paint the sinuosity of the river in their skin. And also they weave it in their textiles, because the river is totally part of their lives in a very integral way. So this is an homage to them, and also to women in general. And this is the first of the new series, where the character is searching for new territories and integrating herself in these new territories that I don't know where it is going to go. I'm just exploring this fascinating moment, because the challenge here is that in places that are abandoned, like this one, they normally give you 45 to 50 minutes permission to get in, and you don't know exactly what you're going to get. So I enter with my photographer to this place that I've never been, and we discovered that it was this weaver enormous place. So as we were going fast with the time ticking, I was picking up from the floor little bits and pieces of the tool that they used to produce, and started knotting them as we were walking. And when we arrived to this place, I said, this is the place to make this happen. So I made this dress immediately right there, you know, like knotting and doing as fast as I can. And there is no light, just the natural light. And that was it. So let's see what happens in the next series. But this is the last of my series. Now, I wanted to share with you, if we have time, I think we have 5 or 10 minutes, the integration of my photography or my performance with my other work. Because as Jaime said, I do a lot of other disciplines. At the beginning of my career, I was like, I don't know what I am. I don't know if I am a photographer or if I am a painter or if I am a sculptor. And I confided this angst to a very wise, wonderful writer friend of mine, Joaquin Gutierrez, a fine gentleman from Costa Rica. And he said to me, well, maybe that's your characteristic. And really it solved my problem, because from then on, I assume myself as this person that does all these things. And then later I learned that Borges had many desks for his many writings. So he had a desk for poetry and a desk for the articles for journalism. And so I thought, this is perfect. This is what I'm going to do. So this is exactly what I do. When I'm tired of this performance, I go and draw. And then when I'm tired, I go and do my sculpture. But I think that at the end, because you are the same person, you end up doing the same thing. So this is what I'm talking about, image and object. The deer, that is one of the animals that I really love more. What I did was I casted myself with plaster, and then I transferred that positive into a resin positive, and I did this piece with real deer hair. So in this case, it's both things, no? It's my performance and also object. And in the case of the feathers, that is material that I use a lot. I investigated a lot about the use of the feathers in the history of Peru. And there is a wonderful story about when the Catholic priests arrived to colonize Peru. They arrived with the images of the saints, you know, or the Virgin and the baby Jesus, etc. And the Peruvians in Cusco realized immediately that there was a hierarchy, and the number one in the hit parade was baby Jesus. So they just adopted the image of baby Jesus and started putting little ponchitos with feathers that are the ones that the royalty use, and little feathers up here. And the priests that were not in terms of the syncretism, but selling one religion, prohibited the use of the feathers in the indumentary of the religious images. So the image of the feather passed to be the image of rebellion. And I started doing these little dresses that are more or less 60 centimeters high as the rebellion or the capacity or the possibility of flight, for the possibility of extending your wings and fly. So this is more or less what I did with the feathers in this case. And this is the god Mercury, but from the Andes. So the shoes are beat up, poor, hardworking, but still a god. And this is also a comparison of the reuse of the residual of the natural elements. I go on picking what falls from the trees normally. I walk and pick up the seeds, the little twigs, this, that, and the other, and put them in my pockets. And these are the cocoons of a butterfly in Philippines. That when the cocoon is empty because the worm and the butterfly has gone out, the peasants wrap open the chrysalis and take out the membrane and incorporate that little membrane into their food because it's protein. And then they throw this to the floor, and here I come. These are the chrysalis that have been sewn back in order to form a little shawl. And this is how they look. I have not made anything to it. And then the last piece that I want to relate with is the one that I was telling you about, the horror and Eve and confronting. Well, in the 90s in Peru, we had a terrible time with Shining Path, that is a guerrilla movement that was devastating the country. So what I did in the spirit of this same work was a group of sculptures that I presented as made out of salt. These are in reality mannequins from the store, but I broke the neck, the arms, and the legs, and I glued them back with the shape and horror of a person that is turning around, because these are a group of women that are called the wife of Lot, no? The ones that turn around to see their city burned, and they were punished for that, and they were converted in salt. Well, in an allegory to what happened in Peru, I did the same. I turned them into salt, except for the little baby in the middle, because I read in the newspaper that the killers came into the house of these poor people, and the baby went under the bed and saw everything, and the baby was able to point out who was the criminal. So she is being protected by these women, and they look like this in the museum. And she's the only one with crystal eyes. This is what I wanted to tell you about, the integration of the arts in terms of my photographic and the rest of the things that I do. And this is it. Thank you very much.
Hello, thank you so much for your exhibition. I wanted to know why you fell in love with Russia. I'm very interested in this because I live there, so.
I am totally smitten. First of all, I think that my relationship is because I hang out with artists. So that phrase takes care of all the rest that everybody's imagining. Yes, an artist, of course. My husband is an opera composer, so his opera is being performed in Russia a lot. And so imagine hanging out with musicians and opera guys and plus people from the Hermitage. It's like a dream, really. And I go in February, very cold. Yes. And I have been able to visit collections that are like beyond belief. Because little by little, you know, you kind of arrive to a certain place and you express your interest, and suddenly somebody says, yes, but I know the archive that is normally closed, but let me see if we can open it. And there I am looking at a real letter of Genghis Khan, for example. So yes, it is quite amazing. Yes. You will tell me later where you live.
Can you talk a little bit about your collaboration with photographer? Is it always the same photographer, or do you need to find a photographer when you travel to different locations?
Very, 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 very interesting question. Yes, I have been collaborating for a long period with one photographer, but I have been able to do even 1 or 2 shots with a complete stranger photographer. With the one, of course, we have been talking beforehand, and it has almost always have been a wonderful pleasure. Yes, except for one occasion, I have never had any problems at all in terms of understanding the whole, the whole situation. Normally, the session of photos is we start the week before. The week before we sit down, we talk, we know what's going on. My assistants know what they are going to paint, etc. And I have a person for the lights, another person to iron, if we have to iron, another person to be in case anything happens, like somebody rings the bell. And I am a little bit of a control freak in that aspect. And we start 7 a.m. and we shoot 3 p.m. because the process of painting is very long. So in order to arrive to that point, I have already had a lot of conversations and stuff with the photographer. So normally it's a wonderful experience. Yes, thank you. Yes.
Hi, sorry, I was a few minutes late, so I apologize if you already answered this question in the beginning. But I was wondering how long you've been doing this, and if this has always been your only job, or if you've had other ways if this has been like the main way you've supported yourself over the years, or if this has like been what you've done your entire life.
Well, as an artist, always, all my life. The series of photos I started in 2001. Anybody who does this doesn't do it for the money, right? So you have to just jump the hurdles, and everybody who is in the same métier knows that 1 month you are like, oh my God, I cannot believe that another commission is coming, and 3 months you are like, what am I going to do? It's always the same case. But I don't know what I would do with myself without doing this. I'm just totally blind in love with what I do. Yeah.
Do you think there's if there is any influence of fashion and film in your work? Because you've talked about how the influence of Orientalism in art in the world, and also all this, it's inevitable to think about fashion with all these fabrics and all these flowers and these patterns and these creases, and that makes me think of Kurosawa, the dreams, you know, all these garments, traditional garments. So if there is any influence,
Absolutely, yes, yes.
maybe you, as you were younger,
Yes.
you were watching a particular type of images, or
Well, two things. First of all, the textile itself is so sensual to me, so absolutely essential, like the second skin almost. I always go, wherever I go, the first thing to a textile museum, to a museum of embroidery, to see how they made the silk, how I go, I am a museum goer, like very intenso mode. So I really, really do believe in textile, in embroidery, in colors, how they define places, and how important it is. Let me tell you a horror story, but true. When they opened the anonymous graves of the killings in Peru, the only way they knew who was there was because of the textiles. They recognized this little piece of weaving is from the north, and it must be the son of, you know. It's absolutely essential. Film, definitely, no? But I think that I gravitate more from towards the story of the textile. But and you have mentioned, of course, Kurosawa, who is a god. Yes.
Yes, especially dreams. That is all
Exactly.
about this, you know, because these all are kind of dreams. These
Yes.
images are
Yes.
little thoughts.
Yes, yes, indeed.
Cecilia, I'm curious, where do you store and how do you keep track of all the little things you pick up on your walks, and what does that look like, your storage room?
Unfortunately, I recycle, unfortunately, because in Lima, I have a huge studio, but the bugs are my enemy, so I have to recycle. Here, I have no place to put them, so I have to recycle, but it breaks my heart, but I have to, yes. And I reuse a lot. I reuse a lot of things. I paste and glue and change and paint and, you know, but yeah.
So in a way, you have an immediate application of the things that you find because you can't hang on to them for longer. You must create a piece based on what you're finding in real time.
And then of course sometimes I have young angels that put up with my things. Like right now in Navarra, I have done some boats that are the size of this hall. And thank God the university have decided to stay with them, you know, otherwise I would be destroying them practically, you know. Now that goes to answer the question at the back of how do you do it and why do you do it, no? Mm-hmm. I am so convinced when I am doing the boat that I do not think of what the hell am I going to do with this after. So, I'm sorry, I keep on banging your... Yes, but well, sometimes the treasures are words. Like one piece that I have recently done about wishes that I found in a church in Center Lima. I went into the church and I saw that under the images of all the saints there was this acrylic transparent box with a lot of little papers that were the wishes that people right there immediately out of seeing them, they go like, oh, I'm going to put my wish on. So they pick up a little piece of paper that can be the bus ticket or whatever, and they write, please God, give me a dog or whatever. And I asked the guy in the church, what are you going to do when this is totally filled? And he goes like, we throw them? When? So next, my piece. So, you know, sometimes it's words. The thing is to go on with your button on, you know, and like I do say, I go hunting, no? Because I go looking at things that sometimes, you know, it just inspires me, no? But well, that's the essence, so.
Thank you so much for a great
My
talk.
pleasure. Thank you. Thank you so much.